After my daughter was declared brain dead, my husband urged me to sign the organ donation agreement. I was drowning in a sea of grief, my mind on the verge of collapse. Then, I discovered, quite by accident, that Kathy's attending physician, Lori Guerrero, was my husband's former lover. They lied, claiming Kathy was brain dead, tricking me into signing the agreement to harvest her heart to save Lori's daughter. I saw Patrick escorting Lori's daughter out of the hospital. They laughed together, looking like a blissful family. I confronted them at their door, only to be pushed on the stairs by Patrick and Lori, my life ending then and there. Now, I have been reborn on the very day I signed that donation agreement. Looking at my daughter lying in the hospital bed, I silently swore to myself, this time, I would make those two deceitful lovers pay. Kathy's small body was covered in tubes, her pale face marked by a sickly flesh. I rubbed my eyes, realizing I had returned to that familiar scene, facing once again the moment that had shattered my heart in my previous life. With trembling hands, I stroked Kathy's warm little hand. A pang of sorrow hit me, and tears streamed down my face. I miss you so much. So much. I'm so sorry. My husband, Patrick, gently patted my shoulder from beside me. Don't disturb her anymore. Let's go. It's time. Urged by a nurse, I dragged my weakened legs out of the ICU alongside Patrick. We entered a cramped office, and he handed me a pen. You've seen it all. Every moment Kathy stays alive is pure agony now that she's brain dead. Sign the organ donation agreement. Let the child find peace. Hearing his casual words, a tide of anger surged within me, drying up my tears instantly. I slammed the pen down on the desk and brushed off his hand from my shoulder. I'm not signing. My daughter is definitely not brain dead. Patrick froze. Didn't we already agree? You've seen the doctor's diagnosis. This is the best hospital in the city. What more could you be doubting? I was furious. I saw right through Patrick's feigned innocence and surprise at his sinister intentions. In my past life, I trusted him far too blindly. My daughter Kathy had been admitted to this hospital for pneumonia. I never imagined that the attending Dr. Patrick had arranged, Lori, would turn out to be his former lover. Pneumonia wasn't usually fatal, but after I left for just one night, Kathy's condition suddenly deteriorated, landing her in the emergency room. I rushed back to the hospital, only to hear Lori announce, before I could even recover from the shock, Patrick was already pushing me to sign the organ donation agreement. Kathy has always been a kind child. If she knew her organs could save others, I believe she would agree. I was inconsolable, and under Patrick's half coercion, half persuasion, I signed my name on the agreement. What I didn't know was that soon after Kathy's ventilator was removed, her heart was transplanted into Lori's daughter. I was consumed by the agony of losing my daughter while Patrick quickly returned to his normal life. By sheer chance, I saw Patrick in an amusement park in a neighboring city. A little girl I didn't recognize sat on his shoulders, with Lori leaning close to him. I followed them, seeking the truth, but they teamed up and pushed me from a high building. In a pool of my own blood, I clutched the pendant containing a lock of my daughter's hair. I had thought about ending my own life many times, but whenever I saw their triumphant faces, the flames of hatred pierced through my weakness. To be reborn at this moment, I felt incredibly fortunate. I realized that fate had given me this chance to avenge my daughter. Thinking about all this, I wanted nothing more than to slap that deceitful look off Patrick's face. I'm taking Kathy to another hospital right now for a full reevaluation. I will never sign this agreement. Seeing the fury on my face, Patrick frowned. Amanda, stop being unreasonable. You went home last night, while I stayed here all night. I saw the entire resuscitation process with my own eyes. I know this is hard for you, but this is the reality. Can you control your emotions? I let out a cold laugh. Are you seriously asking a mother to stay calm when her child's life hangs by a thread? And why did I go home last night? I went because your mother said her heart was feeling unwell and wanted me to look after her. A flicker of annoyance crossed Patrick's face. Don't go blaming my mother or me. This is just Kathy's misfortune. You agreed to sign the agreement just now, and now you're changing your mind. Don't you think you're being too emotional? Seeing his indifferent attitude, I didn't want to waste any more words on him. I knew the most important thing now was to transfer Kathy to another hospital for a fresh diagnosis and treatment. I understood that the Patrick standing before me was no longer the man who once played barefoot in puddles with our daughter in our small rented room. I pushed the office door open forcefully and headed towards the ICU. At the same time, I dialed a familiar number on my phone. In the 7 years since I married Patrick, I had also severed ties with my family. My parents and brother had vehemently opposed our marriage, so I left my wealthy home to move to another city with Patrick. But now, the only ones who could help me were my family, who had always supported me. When the call connected, I didn't have time to explain much. I choked out a single sentence before breaking down in tears. Mom, Dad, please save my daughter. She needs to be transferred to the best hospital in the province. My parents didn't hold any grudges from the past. They quickly contacted the best medical team in the province. After hanging up the phone, I looked up at the clock on the wall. The transfer team would arrive in 2 hours. Just then, Patrick rushed over in a hurry. "Amanda, what are you doing here? Stop making trouble and come with me to sign the agreement. We already agreed to it before, and the whole medical team is waiting for us." I didn't look at him. I just kept my eyes on the ICU door. Seeing my lack of response, Patrick seemed a bit agitated. "Stop standing there and let's go. Don't keep the doctors waiting." I turned to look at him. "Kathy is still lying in the ICU, and you're already so eager to take her organs?" Patrick suddenly looked a bit flustered. "What are you talking about? She's our daughter. How could I be that cruel? But Kathy is already brain dead. There's no hope of her waking up. She's just a lifeless shell. Organ donation is a meaningful act. Kathy once said when she was watching TV that she wanted her life to have more value. Isn't this fulfilling her wish?" Hearing these words, my rage boiled over. A few months ago, Patrick had us watch some documentaries about organ donation. At the time, Kathy was moved to tears. After all, she was so young, so kind-hearted. But I never imagined that Kathy's kindness and my trust would become the groundwork for Patrick's plan. I gathered all my strength and slapped him hard across the face. "Get out. I'm not going anywhere. No one is to touch my daughter. I'm transferring her." Patrick staggered back, clutching his face, looking utterly disheveled. He couldn't help but shout loudly, "You're holding on to your own issues, forcing our daughter to stay in this world. Keeping her like this is only causing her pain. What's the point? Her muscles will atrophy, she'll develop bed sores, her whole body will decay. She'll rot alive. Wouldn't it be better for her to leave peacefully?" I glared at this stranger of a man standing before me. I knew that beneath his self-righteous words lay a carefully plotted, vicious scheme. In the midst of the tense standoff, a figure rushed over and grabbed Patrick. Patrick, are you okay?" It was Patrick's mother, Doreen Bowman. She looked at his swollen face with concern, then turned to me, her eyes blazing with anger. "Amanda, how could you hit Patrick like this? You're nothing but a shrew. Kathy's condition is hopeless now. This isn't Patrick's fault, so stop taking it out on him. And what's the big deal about signing a donation agreement? The dead can't come back. She'll be cremated in the end anyway. What more do you want? Are you planning to keep Kathy at home forever?" Doreen's words became more and more outrageous, her emotions escalating. I was livid, my eyes burning with fury, and I slapped Patrick hard on the other side of his face. Dazed by the 2 slaps, Patrick seemed stunned. Doreen, not expecting this, screamed and rushed to cradle Patrick's face, filled with distress. I looked coldly at my hand, now reddened from the impact. "Does it hurt?" "It should. Only a parent feels the pain of their own child. Get out of here. If you say another word, I'll smash you with this thermos." Doreen's eyes widened, and her lips trembled with rage. "Shrew, you're nothing but a complete shrew." The scene turned chaotic. Patrick, barely containing his anger, demanded answers from me. "Amanda, you've slapped me, you've yelled, you've vented enough, haven't you? Now come and sign the papers. There's nothing more to discuss. You already agreed back in the doctor's office. You can't just back out now." With that, he snatched my phone and forcefully grabbed my arms. With Doreen's help, they started dragging me away. I gritted my teeth and struggled desperately. Seeing that I was no match for the 2 of them, I decided to cry out for help. "Doctor, nurse, security, they're trying to kidnap me." A few nurses rushed over, but seeing it was Patrick, a familiar face, they awkwardly hesitated. Patrick forced a smile. "It's fine. My wife is just a bit emotional. No need to bother yourselves." But I refused to relent, shouting, "They were the ones who attacked me first. If you don't stop them, I'll keep shouting until every patient's family comes over to see." The nurses exchanged glances, then reluctantly stepped forward to separate us. Patrick grudgingly let go of me. My heart finally settled, and I quickly glanced at the time. I thought to myself, only 1 more hour until the transfer team arrives. If I can just hold out for 1 more hour, I can take my daughter away from here for good. "Patrick, what's going on? Why is it taking you so long to come over?" Lori's sweet, coquettish voice rang out. She looked at Patrick tenderly and, noticing the swelling on his face, hurried over to examine it. The moment Patrick saw her, all his anger vanished, replaced by a gentle expression. "It's nothing. Amanda doesn't want to sign, so we had a bit of an argument." Lori looked up at me. At that moment, I knew I must have looked a mess with my disheveled hair and wild eyes. "Mrs. Bowman, your daughter is already brain dead. You yourself agreed to sign the donation agreement earlier. The hospital is very grateful for your magnanimity and generosity. I also understand that there's always a mental hurdle to overcome with such decisions. Rest assured, though your child is no longer here, Her life will continue in another form. I cut her off, my voice loud and fierce, silencing her hypocritical speech. You're lying. My daughter is not brain dead. Your diagnosis is fake. There's no way I'm signing anything. I want to transfer right now. Lori shook her head, pretending to look hurt. Mrs. Bowman, I know you're grieving, but please don't make baseless accusations, okay? I worked tirelessly to save your daughter for nearly 10 hours, stayed up all night, and now I have to continue treating other patients. And yet, in your eyes, I'm just an incompetent doctor. We prepared extensively for the signing of the agreement, and the media reporters are waiting. How am I supposed to explain this to them? Hearing this, the surrounding patients and nurses began whispering amongst themselves. Dr. Guerrero is one of the best doctors in the entire hospital. How could she have made a wrong diagnosis? I think this mother is just too emotional, causing all this trouble. Yeah, there's no sympathy for her. Dr. Guerrero put in so much effort, and she's still being criticized. This is just unreasonable. Upon seeing the crowd pointing fingers at me, Patrick's face showed a hint of smug satisfaction. Amanda, you're too emotional right now. Why don't we go back to the office and talk, okay? As he spoke, he reached out to grab me. I took a step back, wary. Don't touch me. Lori signaled to the nurses who had gathered around. Out of nowhere, a security guard appeared, pinning my shoulders and slamming me hard against the wall. Lori directed the nurses with authority. She's too agitated. We need to administer a sedative right away. Patrick quickly chimed in. I'm her husband. I agree. Seeing the nurse with the syringe coming closer, I struggled in desperation, shouting for help, but no one around me made a move. Stop. Let her go right now. Suddenly, a commanding voice boomed across the room, startling everyone.